These guys are all entrepreneurs and either successful entrepreneurs or on a demonstrable path to success. One of them, Mr. Brown here, has the lowest price for a gigabit to the home in America and competitive with most other countries too. Every one of these guys, Pat Kennedy just won a presidential medal of what? E-award. An E-award, a presidential E-award for his work fibering up the city of San Leandro in the East Bay of California. But Gary Evans has had perhaps the longest successful multiple municipal network that's still growing and thriving in the country. Well, I'll let Gary speak. I'll let everyone, here's how it's going to work, okay? I would like every one of you to just go down, starting with Leslie, 3 minutes max, 4 minutes maybe, but not over 5 minutes.
5.
Not over 5.
Okay.
And the idea is to say what you're doing and how it's working very briefly, and then if we get through it all with reasonable timing, then we'll come back and have a discussion, take some questions and so on. Thank you. Big enough to succeed.
Is this on? Yes. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Leslie Nulty. I'm representing the East Central Vermont Community Fiber Optic Network, a consortium of 23 tiny towns, barely towns, in the middle of Vermont, which is one of the most rural areas of one of the most rural states, most rural now, in the United States, an area characterized by heavily wooded mountains with steep, narrow, winding valleys. We tried to get an initial raise capital in the capital markets, which failed with the 2008 financial collapse. We failed to get stimulus money, and then we decided to bootstrap our efforts by raising money from local investors in the towns. To date, we just closed on our third closing at the beginning of April. We've raised over $2 million. Thus far, we've completed phase 1 of our build-out. We connected our first customers 2 days before Hurricane Irene took down one of our aerial cables that was 40 feet above the level of the White River. However, we were back up in 36 hours. We are closing in on 200 paying customers. We are hitting almost all of our business plan targets with respect to take rate, average revenue per user, capital costs. We are going out for further rounds of capital raising from local investors. And by the way, anyone here who would like to invest in the East Central Vermont Community Fiber Network, please see me after the meeting. But we're very, very confident. To me, it's like trying to feed starving children. Most of the people in our, maybe 40 to 60% of the folks in the areas where we are providing fiber to the user or have to rely either on dial-up or satellite, which of course is expensive and unsatisfactory. So that's the story of EC Fiber Network. With only 3 minutes, I will wait for questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Levi Maaia from Full Channel in Rhode Island. Full Channel is a small broadband, family-owned broadband provider that was started by my grandfather back in 1965. It took him about 20 years. It was a cable company at the time. Only cable TV, obviously, was traveling down the wire. It took him about 20 years in negotiations and battles with media giants in Rhode Island to secure a franchise for cable TV, and in 1982 he began stringing wires to deliver cable TV. He was the only individual awarded a cable franchise in the state. The rest of the franchises went to the Providence Journal Company, the Outlet Company, which owned the NBC affiliate, so rather large media, regional media conglomerates. He was the only individual, and as such was given the smallest franchise area, the service area in the state. Cox Communications was one of the early franchisees as well, and soon by the end of the 90s, into the turn of the millennium, Cox had owned all of the properties throughout the rest of the state of Rhode Island except Full Channel in Barrington, Warren, and Bristol, which is Bristol County, Rhode Island. In 2002, Cox made a bid to buy Full Channel. My grandfather decided to opt out of that, and Cox Communications ultimately overbuilt Full Channel, and now we compete. So it's sort of a reverse scenario to RCN and Comcast and Cablevision, where the little guy is the overbuilder. In this case, the big guy is the overbuilder. And many in 2002 guessed that Full Channel wouldn't be around much longer. It's now 2012, and Full Channel is as strong as ever. In 2000, just prior to Cox's entry into the market, Full Channel was already making forays into high-speed internet through cable modem technology. We actually launched with DOCSIS 2 when most other providers were providing DOCSIS 1.1. And right now we're on the verge of launching DOCSIS 3 and keeping up with that trend. So I will save the rest for questions if there are any at the end. We've got 2 microphones.
I'm Pat Kennedy. My day job is I own a software company, build it from scratch, 32 years old, 815 employees. We operate in 110 countries, and we deliver in 9 languages. Why is that germane? I live in San Leandro. It's a very much underserved area for broadband. We outgrew our building, and I had to decide, am I going to move or what? And I chose the or what. And the or what was that the city of San Leandro owns conduit it wasn't using, so I traded the city of San Leandro 10% of my fibers for their conduit, and we're pulling a 12-mile loop around San Leandro. We also happen to have 2 BART stations, which is our rapid transit train in San Leandro. So I put a vault in the street, and we linked into the BART Telecommunications, which takes us to 2 data centers with lots of carriers. This is going very fast because I'm paying for it. That's much easier than trying to convince anybody else that broadband's the future. And the way I'm doing it, and the reason I'm doing it, is that this is really a business development. We had a speaker earlier that talked about how these carriers will decide where they want to develop, and they'll do it in style. So I'm going through all this work to put 288 strands around San Leandro. And at the same time, if you know the Bay Area, San Leandro is what's called the East Bay. It's the bigger, dumber side of the bay. If you go over on the peninsula, level 3 is running a quad trench from San Francisco down to Silicon Valley, which is 8 288 strand fibers. So this is for business development in a manufacturing area, which nobody else wanted. It's not for residents, and we'll see how it works. I have no idea if this is going to make money or not.
Is this mic on? Hey, cool. Good afternoon, rather good morning. My name is John Brown. I have a small company in Albuquerque, New Mexico called CityLink Fiber. We started 6 years ago. I bought a fiber network out of bankruptcy that had been built in 2000 in Albuquerque using robotic technology that deploys the fiber through existing storm and sewer systems. That network and that company went through a bankruptcy proceeding, and I acquired the Albuquerque rights and certain intellectual property rights to the robotic technologies. At the time when I bought the company, we had 4 miles and 19 commercial buildings and 3 government buildings connected. Today we're a little over 20 miles and we're pushing past 150 commercial properties and somewhere 300-400 residential customers as well, and growing. We are self-funded. We are funded out of cash flow. We are not funded out of any kind of VC. Every VC I talk to wants to figure out how to build me up and flip me in 3 years, and I don't think that's the right model. I think this is a sustainable issue, a sustainability issue for our community, and we're planning on taking this not only just in Albuquerque, but we're planning on taking it to other communities as well. part of what we got out of the bankruptcy proceeding was right-of-way agreements in 50 other communities across the country. So we're looking at now working on expanding to that. We provide internet, we provide telephone service, we provide hosting services. We are peering at One Wilshire in LA. We are now peering in Denver. We're about to drag a link to 350 Cermak in Chicago, all in an effort to get better connectivity into New Mexico. Unfortunately, I don't see Vint in the room, but I was going to make a statement that we've been running IPv6 for 6 years. Every one of our customers today gets an IPv6/48 allocation. I don't know if they know what to do with it yet. I haven't been able to convince anybody in our state government to put anything up on the web on V6, but it's a work in progress. So that's sort of who we are. We provide gig to the house. We provide gig to small business. And we love our cable and DSL competitors out there because they make it very easy for us to sell a symmetrical pipe. We are not the internet police. We don't count how many bytes you transfer. We don't care. As Jay Leno would say, crunch all you want, we'll pass more packets. So I'll think that's my time, and I will continue on to Ken here.
Well, thank you, John. Ken Johnson here with the Conneaut Telephone Company in Conneaut, Ohio. We're located about 60 miles from Cleveland. If you look at the Pennsylvania-Ohio border and follow it up till it hits water in Lake Erie, we're right in that corner. We are a corporation, a small independent rural telephone company. We were founded back in 1897. It was interesting. I didn't think about it till my previous general manager mentioned to me that the company was founded before the Spanish-American War. I was like, well, that puts it in perspective. The company's always, I don't know where the culture came from, but when the folks started it back in the 1890s, it was really a case of they had heard about this telephone thing, and they wanted to bring that to our town and make sure that the people in our town had the same telecommunications advantages as anybody in a rural or urban area. And that culture has permeated throughout. Since 1897, I'm only the 6th chief executive in the history of the company, and I've only been on the job for 5 years. Really back in the 70s, 80s, the company understood that access charges and the subsidies that went into rate of return carriers was going to go away, and they didn't want to rest on their laurels, so they were always playing entrepreneur. Our company helped bring the first cellular service to our area, and we remain a 25% stakeholder in the local Alltel, and yes, it's still out there, Alltel wireless service. 1996, when the internet came out, nobody was offering it in our area, and the way the dial-up calling spaces were laid out, nobody probably would have. So our company stepped up. That's actually when I joined the company 16 years ago. And during the run-up in dial-up from 96 through 2000 before broadband hit, we were the only company that could consistently keep busy signals. Remember those from the dial-up days? We would stop taking customers, in fact, in order to maintain the integrity of the service. After the Telecom Act of '96 was passed, the company realized that the future was going to be in triple play communications. They took on an ambitious amount of debt in order to start a competitive cable TV franchise. And I might add, as we kind of bash the big guys here a little bit, our city fathers had come to our company and asked us to do cable in competition with what was then TCI, because TCI had been in 10 years in violation of their franchise requirements for upgrades for additional bandwidth. It's amazing that that company found the budget. After 10 years being in violation and no plans to rebuild the system, 6 months after they heard we were going to enter the market, magically outsourced IT consulting. A lot of governments and businesses in our area rent the people that take care of our network to come in and take care of their networks. And it's one of my favorite marketing points when one of our small doctor offices comes to us with 6 PCs and a file server and says, how do I know you guys have the skills to help me? And we kind of point to our 2 data centers and say, $2 million in cable TV infrastructure, digital, high-speed internet, telephone network. I think we can handle your 6 Windows machines. And we do a pretty good job with that. You know, the interesting thing is with some of the FCC rules, you can imagine we're not happy about the directive that came out in the fall. And I'm going to speak personally for myself, not really for my company. But obviously all the entrepreneurial things we've been doing have been based around the notion that this was coming. We just didn't know when. The only thing I really take issue with is the aggressive time frames that do not allow us, you know, adequate time to transition. But in some of the meetings that I've had with our state commission and trade agencies, they really feel like part of the push behind these directives is to force consolidation in the independent space. And that maybe independents aren't economical for doing business. But I'm not using the PowerPoint that I prepped. But it's interesting, I went back and looked at our primary competitors, whether it's Windstream, Time Warner, some of these bigger players, and look at what their CEO makes compared to one of the salary surveys I've looked at as CEOs for independent telcos, average countrywide around 125 to 130,000 a year. And it is shocking to see that these larger carriers, and they tell you that they can do it better, they can do it more cheaply, but when they've got a 7, it is really mind-boggling that, and then you put in all the administrative layers with all of their high salaries. There's just no way they can do it the way we do it. And so we're excited to serve our market. We continue to be innovative. We've extended beyond our footprint and are actually in the restructuring a little bit of our debt service so that we can deal with the FCC directive, but also launch CLEC and fiber services in our neighboring community. And basically, if anybody has a hard place to get access to or needs high bandwidth, they come to us, we figure out a business case and a way to get it done because we're local in the market. The big guys run it through their calculators, say it'll be $50,000 build, $10,000 a month, take it or leave it. And so they come to us on a first name basis, and then we kind of pursue it from every angle we possibly can until we can get something done and get them the access to the network that they need. So again, we'll reserve anything else for questions.
Thank you. I'm Gary Evans from Hiawatha Broadband in Winona, Minnesota, which is about where Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa come together. Interestingly, Ken's company certainly is the granddaddy of companies on the stage. My personal roots date back to slightly after the Spanish-American War. Which is why I have some notes. My company dates back to 1992. If I were to ask the audience today what the #1 performing stock in the country has been to 1987, or since 1987, does anybody here know the answer? The #1 performing stock since 1987 is not Microsoft, it's not Yahoo. It's a company called Fastenal, headquartered in Winona, Minnesota, which has doubled its net worth 38,000 times since 1987. That's instructive because the chairman of the board of Fastenal, once the CEO, called me in 1992 and said, I've been hearing a lot about this new stuff called fiber optics. I think we ought to look at it and see if it has a practical application to education. Now, of all of you sitting in the room, I should be highly suspect. I spent 30 years in newspapering. I spent 12 years in higher education administration. And now I'm running a telecom company comprised of 104 children who are doing very great things. LumenNet was the creation that came out of the look at fiber optics. It banded together our educational institutions, our healthcare institutions, and City Hall, and if you ask me if that was for political reasons, I wouldn't argue with you. We developed a business model by accident, I think. We became one of the nation's first small-town internet service providers. It's interesting when you look at the internet that in 1992, those of us who were using it were doing so most often via a toll call to AOL in Chicago. And one of the things that we thought important to our community and its education was local presence or a local internet service provider so we could eliminate the cost of access. In 1997, we took the step away from not-for-profit to for-profit, although our educational institutions own 40% of the company I head, which helps us always continue our education mission. Our first two builds were HFC. We're now overbuilding them with fiber. But at the same time, unlike many companies across the nation, we have also completed a modification to DOCSIS 3, so at least in the interim to full fiber, we can provide high bandwidth applications. We have been cash flow positive since 2000 and done with our cash flow and equity investments from our board of directors. I'll stop there and wait for questions.
Okay. These are really fascinating stories. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Now, I want to ask each of you a little bit of a follow-on question. Leslie, how many customers do you have? 200 right now?
Yeah, we connected our first customer last August. She had to be evacuated 2 days later because of the amazing flood from Hurricane Irene, which was the worst flooding in Vermont since 1927. Roads were cut, bridges washed away. Very, very serious. So now we actually have been started extending into our phase 2 build, and we're close to we expect to have 200 customers by June.
Okay, I want to ask you about that phase 2 build. So you have customers that have your service.
Yes.
And they have neighbors.
Yes.
So what do the neighbors do if they want service?
Well, first they badger us and they say, why can't you come to my house? And we say, because it costs us $25,000 a mile. By the way, the majors say it costs $40,000 to $50,000 a mile to build in rural Vermont. We do it for $25,000 with an average of 6 customer connections per mile. And we can only get to you if you can organize your neighbors to invest. We issue tax-exempt promissory notes because we're legally a municipality. And so they go out and organize community meetings, and we come out and talk to the people. And as a result, they then ask for our investor packet, which costs us $5.50 per each to produce, and has been vetted by Securities Council in the state of Vermont. And as a result of that, people purchase these promissory notes. And we have, I don't have the latest count on the numbers of investors, but it's over 150. And the median investment is $5,000.
And your addressable market is how big? You want to, if in maturity, EC Fiber would be?
Oh, EC Fiber is 23 towns with 1,500, we estimate 1,500 miles of cable. Is that right? 1,500 miles of cable throughout the territory and 22,000 households. The other thing that's been very interesting to us, if I might just convey to what I suspect is probably mostly an urban audience, is we're learning things about rural communities that we never expected. We expected to have in our first build 10 business customers. We've got 25. There are so many people doing business out of their homes who need high bandwidth. And by the way, I should have said that we're just about to introduce a 25 megabit per second service.
Okay. Now, do you take any, are you did you qualify for any BIP, BTOP?
Nothing.
Universal service? Nothing. Okay. So this is strictly
do-it-yourself.
Local investors, do-it-yourself effort. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
have a few questions for Levi. Levi, why did your grandfather make the decision not to sell to Cox?
I think it might have been a combination of factors. One of them, he's quoted as saying, I didn't hear him say this, he's quoted as saying that, well, if I sold my company, what would I do? Invest my money in cable stocks that I had no control over the companies? Or would, could I continue running this business and try to do something for the good? I think ultimately he saw Cox's offer as too low for the amount of blood and sweat that he put into the company, and decided he was going to hold on to it and see where that ride took him.
And by the way, your mother and father are here?
Yeah, they're up in the
back. Where are they?
Back row by the clock.
Hey, all right. So this is truly a family effort. Thanks for coming, guys. You have how many customers?
We have about 7,000 customers. Probably more than half of them have high-speed internet, and we've just launched digital phone voice.
What you're staying even with, again, you're growing against Cox, staying even. How's the market share shaping up?
There's not a lot of growth in the video market because I think nationwide we're seeing a trend of people getting television from a variety of places, not just cable TV. I've been to several industry conferences where people see that as a bad thing and they're very scared of it. At Full Channel, we're not really scared of it because we see growth in so many other areas. So for customers that we've lost to competitors or to cord cutting, as people say in the pejorative term, we've gained customers in high-speed internet and digital phone and whatever's next.
Okay, good. I am tempted to ask you to, I met Levi because he wrote a great article about network neutrality from the position, from the viewpoint of a small cable operator. And I'm tempted to ask you about that, but I'm going to exercise moderator's privilege. But if you want to hear a really interesting story, talk to Levi in the hall. Better yet, Google his article in the Boston Globe and then talk to him, get his email. This guy's great. In fact, this whole panel, you guys are just, every single one of you, my heroes, and so I'm thrilled to have you. I put them on first for a reason, right after Vint and Rebecca and Ian, of course. But anyway, so Patrick, you have exactly how many customers for your network?
I have 3.
Oh, you do have 3.
I have my company, which I put a 10 gig line up to the level 3 because I could. I have the guy across the street that we just hooked in, and we have one just by antennas. We hooked up one of the lighthouse for the blind.
And this is a matter. This news is weeks old, right, or days?
Well, it's not too old because we only have about 1,000 feet of our 12 miles in.
Okay, so eventually you'll have 12 miles in, and you're aiming your offering at who?
Oh, right now this is only for business. The problem we have in business development in San Leandro is if you have a 1 acre warehouse and there's a little office in the corner, nobody will build to you. And so we're losing all of our businesses because they can't get good broadband service. So this is for businesses. Already we've uncovered, for example, a film studio, which we're not out to him yet, but we're building there. But he could only get T1s. So he bought 8 T1s, and it still takes him all night to get his product up to his customer.
And how soon will you be able to serve him?
Probably 2 to 3 months.
Okay. And you've got an existence proof that you can deliver up to 10 gigabits of service. So.
Well, yeah, a lot more than that. We have 2 strands of fiber, and we can get all we want from BART. And we're only using 1 frequency out of 80.
So San Leandro sits along this BART fiber, and there's a couple of other major fiber routes that are a potential advantage, right?
Well, this is like an isolated urban area, if you can have that. We have everybody comes through San Leandro, through being the operative word. They don't stop. So BART, we had to put the vault in to get into BART, but now we have a ring around the city.
Okay. And SP, and is there something up and down
well,
interstate? I don't know what.
There's both tracks, but we don't really use those. Right now, the ring, it goes through a conduit system that was put in for monitoring the stoplights. And the BART train goes through, and that takes us out of the loop down to where the carriers meet.
Okay. So changing the subject, was this E-award actually about the fiber network, or was it about your software company?
No, E-award was for my software company. It's an export award, and we exported $500 million in software in the last 5 years.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
John Brown, I actually want to tell a story about John.
Oh, brother.
I hope to embarrass him greatly. Actually, he was, when he was putting in his fiber network, he was negotiating with the conduit supplier, the people who made the plastic pipe into which the fiber cable went. And at that time, oil prices were very volatile, and oil is the major component of plastic. And John Brown, being an entrepreneur to the core, he went to the fiber. He said, "Can you guarantee me a price for this conduit?" They said, "No, oil is fluctuating too much. We don't know what it'll cost to manufacture it." John said, "Okay, if I buy you a freight car full of plastic pellets, then will you guarantee me a price?" And they said, yes. He bought the freight car plastic pellets. They extruded the conduit. Everybody was happy. Now, that's one story. Now, switch frames. Imagine you're a purchasing agent in AT&T or Verizon or one of the companies that supplies those guys, and you have. Would you even be inclined to have such an unorthodox idea? Because if you did, your boss wouldn't like it. It would create trouble for his management. The company would have to invent a whole set of new procedures, and basically it wouldn't be done, which gave me this whole idea that there are that economies of scale sort of max at some point that's very early, and that a lot of diseconomies of scale kick in. So now, John's a talkative fellow, but tell me, how many customers do you have?
Total number of customers, both residential and business, we're just coming up on 1,000 subscribers.
And of those, how many are res?
I'd say we got about 300-400.
300 or 400 res, and how many take the whole gigabit?
Actually, well, we actually deliver the actual full gigabit, but so your serial clock rate on the interface is a gig, but we do some rate limiting at the IP layer down to about 100 megs to start with. On businesses, we let you burst, and we have in our agreement, if you buy a 10 meg or a 50 meg pipe or what have, we're committing to that. If you start to use the bandwidth more on a 95th percentile type basis, we're probably going to come back and chat with you in a month or so and say, you're really using more than the 20 you're committed to. Let's talk about what the dollars need to be there. But we let you burst, because when you need to download that Microsoft Service Pack for the 6 computers in your network, it's a lot easier to pull it down at gigabit clock rates than it is at DSL clock rates.
Okay, great, thank you, and more power to you. May you find more opportune places to build fiber.
And if I could just add one more quick thing here. One of the things I encourage you folks that are out there building or looking at building is to find, the pellet thing is just an example of thinking out of the box. And we think out of the box with our city, and our city actually listens to it. We just literally last week found a way to help our city get a $20,000 construction project done to help the victims relief unit of the police department. And the way we found that money is they were renewing the lease on the building that they had this department in. And so we went and we talked with the property owner and we did it as tenant improvement. So they didn't need any space changes, but they needed a fiber connectivity back to City Hall, and it was going to cost $20K to do the construction. So we put it in as a tenant improvement. The tenant improvement dollars were there. They renewed a 5-year lease. Now there's commercial. At our cost, but we get the upside of being able to sell to other commercial subscribers in that building. The police get it for free. The taxpayers have no change in out-of-pocket spending. I think there are ways out there, we are an example of it, that you can work with your municipalities, property owners, and others to build a business model that gets the connectivity there, as long as you're not thinking about a 3-year build it, 20% per year return, flip it, sell it, move on. Look at this as a long cycle investment.
Very good. Ken, how many employees at Conneaut?
Right now we're at 39, and that includes me, our CFO, management, customer service, IT techs, cable TV, engineers, technicians, locators, 39 total.
Uh-huh. And how many corporate jets do they need?
Not a one.
You have how many customers?
Let's take it by product line.
Okay.
Regulated telephony in our ILEC area, about 4,400, I believe. High-speed internet, about 3,200, and we were one of the first to get rid of dial-up and convert to all broadband, and basically asked everybody to either upgrade or go away. Cable TV, we're about 2,200, or about 50% market share. I'm trying to think of the other product lines. For our outsourced IT consulting, we do probably between 50 and 75 businesses on retainer, where they pay us a fixed monthly fee, and we kind of smooth the hours. David, I was going to answer one question. I saw it here, if I may, on the Twitter feed.
Oh, good.
Somebody was either complaining or asking the question about wireless ISPs and their lack of representation on this panel and why more people aren't talking about it. But I'll let you know from our company's perspective, we've looked at Motorola Canopy, we've looked at 700, 900, 2.4 gig. In our area, a couple of big problems. One is the amount of foliage that we have up in the Western Reserve of Ohio. 2 is we don't want to roll something that has an immediate obsolescence in terms of bandwidth. That's always been a concern. We're on a treadmill and we get that. We don't like products that end up being, a finite life product and a forklift upgrade. Thirdly is you cannot sell in this modern economy one of the 3 products to residential. It has to be all 3. And if you can't do full rate, high definition video to residential consumers, you're not going to sell your broadband. And even if you do, it's going to be temporary till the triple play guy comes. So that's why wireless to us, unfortunately, it's a sexy product. It's really great in certain environments. But for us, it's just not a sustainable technology for our customers.
Okay, thank you. So, Gary, I'm Fastenal, the CEO came to you and said, how about that fiber? But then did they finance it? You've been profitable a long time, but that didn't just happen, right? So
no, actually, what the CEO asked 2 of us to do was to do a feasibility study to see if fiber could extend the reach of teaching and learning and help also in the sharing of educational resources. when we delivered the feasibility study for Winona, which is our home market, Bob Kierlin, the chairman, said, "Where are you going?" And we said, "Well, you got your feasibility study." And he tapped me on the shoulder and handed me a check for $600,000 saying, "Don't you think we should get at it?" 5 years later, and by the way, the feasibility study had to be delivered in 3 pages or less, including a budget. 5 years later, sitting at a Luminet board meeting, I was rather surprised when Bob simply said, "Is this the time?" And, you know, I think the other 4 of us said the time, and he said, "Yeah, that feasibility study said in its last paragraph, if we were serious about teaching and learning, there needed to be a network that all Winonans could access. Should we build that now?" And I remember saying, "Man, that's going to be expensive." And he said, "Wait a minute, didn't this work out okay last time? I handled the money, you guys handled the network. Couldn't we do that again?" And Fastenal, whose founders had created a network devoted to education, stepped up and purchased the first 8 million shares of stock with which to build the first HBC network, and all of those shares were donated to the not-for-profit community in Winona.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I should point out that this idea of, isn't it about time, here's a check, has another echo in history. Once upon a time, in about 1997, I believe, I could be plus or minus 2 years, but I believe it was 97, when a guy named Bill Gates handed a check to Comcast for $5 million on the basis of a practically non-existent study and said, "That cable modem stuff, can you do it? Here, $5 million, go do it." So, you know, the power of seed money at the right time, put in the right hands, is impressive. So a couple more follow-up questions, really quick, right down the line. You don't take any federal money. Federal money, none whatsoever. Pat? No money. None whatsoever. John Brown? None whatsoever. Ken Johnson might have a slightly longer answer.
Yeah, since we had rate of return closely regulated over the years, we do still receive some USF contribution, although we've shaved off over $1 million of what we receive due to cost reductions, and we still do get money from access charges, but the FCC is looking out to pull that out very quickly.
And it's not a big if they pulled it out, you wouldn't be in danger of.
No, we can still survive. Yeah, absolutely, makes life a little more difficult. And again, it's the interplay. I'm not here to propose that we need to have, you know, explicit subsidy, but it's difficult when your rate of return was capped from, you know, federally, and then your rates, you didn't have any flexibility on what you charge. And then be told, okay, now you need to be the spontaneous small business and survive on your own, when our primary competitors, I mean, you look at, in our area, if you look at a Time Warner price list for unbundled local telephone without, you know, long distance with it, it's about $30 a month. The PUCO in the state of Ohio, up to last year, we weren't even allowed to charge $10 a month. We wanted to, but we weren't allowed to. So that's, you know, it's really not, again, that the FCC is making this change. We're just trying to adapt to a different way of doing business and get away from it. But that's an eventuality we expect. It'll be, you know, 5 years max, we'll be off all subsidy.
Very good. Okay. And Gary, federal money.
we sought a BTOP grant. We're sort of glad we didn't get it. We decided to go ahead and build the project a year later. One of the other things, Dave, I was hoping you were going to ask me about customers.
Consider yourself asked.
All right. We have approximately 14,000 customers. Our lowest penetrated market is 62%, and we are not the low price provider in any market we serve. I would argue that there is a value equation outside price. I believe that service is a more critical variable in rural America than price is.
Very good.
Can I clarify my answer?
Sure.
I'd like to clarify, I have not received any federal money. This is a private-public partnership. I'm partners with the city of San Leandro. The city of San Leandro has applied for some grants to extend the conduit to certain areas of the city that they want to do for their business development.
But they haven't yet received.
No.
But this will be important seed money for development.
It will expand the loop over to that guy with the 8 T1s.
Okay. Very good. Okay, now maybe you should talk to Leslie about getting the guy with the 8 T1s to team up with some of his neighbors and fund the project himself. So we have a few minutes for questions if anyone has them. There are 2 microphones over here. Otherwise, I'm sure there's much more that that these fellows can tell us about their enterprises.
Yeah, if I can throw a comment while folks are getting to the mic. So one of the things that came up, again, looking at the Twitter about wireless, we've actually recently started doing wireless in our market, very short distance runs, licensed runs that get us to buildings, and then we're coming down off that building and building a small metro fiber ring in that area. So I think there is places for wireless in the network. Wireless, just like fiber, is not the silver bullet panacea answer to all. The second thing is I really sort of disagree that you have to have all 3, voice, video, and data, to make a business case. We don't do any video, and we've actually made that a conscious decision. I don't want to spend $1 million on a video head end. I think 3 15-foot dishes is obsolete. All the encoders, re-encoders, encryption, blah, 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 middleware, etc. is all a waste of money, because where is this going? This is going IPTV. It's all going to be video over the top. So why encumber my business with that regulatory model of a cable TV and iNet and PEG and so forth, versus just let the folks go to click on CBS.com or Netflix and grab it. Just give them a big pipe so they can grab that video the way they want.
And we've made the same decision at EC Fiber. We just offer a double play. We have a VoIP product that we offer.
And also at EC Fiber, I should add that the cable doesn't really exist out there, so people who want video get a satellite dish anyway. So Leslie doesn't have to worry about the double play, and John Brown is looking to the future about that. Ken, you have something?
Well, I would just say again, my comments were, one, talking about residential. Our business customers could care less about that. As far as cord cutters, we see it, we don't see it. And that's the difference between, what you'll see in an urban area or say in DC where everybody's thinking about what's coming next. My job is I deal with what's on the street with my customers today. And we don't have people that are cord cutting. And we know based on what happened when the Time Warner upgraded for phone, had we not had video, we probably would have lost half of our voice market share, because we are seeing our residential people go. And even in spite of having satellite television out there, they don't get a lot of traction because they don't do broadband in our area, at least terrestrially. So, again, that's just our marketplace and my take on why we don't utilize wireless.
Okay, thank you. Burning question. Okay, burning comments. Yeah.
Just one thing. There's a lot of people in big media working hard to be certain that the cable TV model is imposed on video content on the internet. It's the opposite of net neutrality. It's content neutrality, and I won't take a lot of time to explain it, but I think there is a danger of that happening and imposing that model of needing to buy 100 channels to get one channel sort of thing. So I don't think we're just in the clear because it's coming through over IP. That's just something I wanted to throw out there.
Very
what?
good.
Imposition of old business model on new technology? Who'd have thunk?
Okay, Susan Mernett from Oakland Local has a question.
So I would love to hear from Pat Kennedy, from other people, about overcoming resistance in civic partnerships. My understanding is that Pat actually brought some of his ideas to Oakland before I ever lived there, and at the time, people weren't very receptive. And I think that a number of you have talked about partnerships like Leslie, you know, and I think that it would be really helpful to some of us like me, would love to see more of this in a place like Oakland. How did you, if you didn't, did you always have a willing partner? How did you overcome any fear or resistance to what maybe people who weren't technical didn't understand?
It's been strange in that there's been no resistance. There were 3 meetings, and I got 7-0 votes every time. We've had public meetings and nothing but accolades. I think the issue is that everyone knows when they're being left behind, and they really can't do anything about it. So I came in, I made it easy for them. The conduit was in the ground, which is really the key. That's 90% of the cost. And I offered to pull all the cable through, and they got something nice out of it. So I made it easy. As far as Oakland, Oakland is just to our north. And what happens is that if you think of BART as an umbilical, that's a rapid transit train, with these loops going through the East Bay, my northernmost leg becomes their southernmost leg. And so now, very inexpensively, they can put a loop in their new business area there by the Coliseum. You have to understand. You have to understand that Oakland, they went for this funding, the initials, so I don't remember, and they didn't get it. So they wanted some broadband, and so now it's down and cost effective, and our costs out there are about $20 a foot to punch a trench down there, and they have it.
In Albuquerque, we basically made it an economic intelligence test. You know, let's take politics out of it. Let's make it a very hard to say no to economically. And in the grand scheme with our city, they spend $3 million a year connecting 150 buildings with bundled T1 type speeds. For just a little bit more, I can build dark fiber to all of those buildings, give them 24 strands of glass, and then watch them take $2 million a year recurring expense off the table forever. Why would you say no to that? Oh, wait a minute, hang on. I'll hook up all the schools too. This begins to my theory. I'll hook up all the schools too, and I'll hook up all the healthcare. Dark fiber, no services. They can go buy services from whoever, maybe us. But the construction, as Pat says, the construction, getting the conduit, getting the cable in the ground, that's the most expensive part. Why would you say no to that? And so that's the kind of out-of-the-pocket thinking that I think would work in many communities. No community is the same.
Just one more quick comment.
Okay.
They hired a consultant, and he came in, and he looked at what we were doing. He says, "Why are you thinking?" So they did go out and get some expertise.
Okay, Gary.
I think that one of the things that we haven't touched upon here is the other applications beyond data and video and voice. Those things don't intrigue me at all, frankly. Quality of life initiatives intrigue me. And we are one of, as the result of the broadband network in our community, we were an early test bed for a medical software developer that's helped us immensely. And currently, we're one of the 17 beacon communities in the country that are pioneering healthcare applications. So networks like the ones you talk about here have lots of potential that's well outside the voice, video, and data economic stream.
Okay, now I don't know your name, but before you go, I want to do a rapid fire. There are 17 or 18 states, Jim, help me out, that have significant barriers to municipalities running their own networks. Leslie, is Vermont such a state?
In Vermont, a
Quickly.
yes.
Yes, it is.
With a caveat. A municipality can own and operate a telecom network, but it cannot use tax dollars to finance it.
So that's a barrier. Okay. Levi, Rhode Island.
I don't think there's a ban on it, but there aren't any. There are some in Massachusetts, but not Rhode Island.
Okay, good. California.
California may or may not. We aggregate packets, and a CityLink is the one that actually provides the services.
Okay. New Mexico.
New Mexico doesn't have any formal regulation that way. We do have an anti-discrimination clause that says you can't use taxpayers' money to compete against private sector. I'm private sector building just for the city, and not thus the city is not competing against other private sector.
Good.
I don't think there's any prohibitive regulation in Ohio.
Okay.
In Minnesota, internet and cable are possible from a municipal standpoint. Telephone is not unless you achieve an election that carries with a supermajority of 65%.
Okay. I don't know you, sir. State your name and affiliation if it's relevant.
I'm Steve Maloney. I'm from Idaho. I had experience with some rural networks there. I was curious, in Vermont, is your rural network primarily aerial or buried?
It's granite in Vermont. It's aerial.
Okay. So with a minute and a half to go, I think we'll cut it off early because we have a exciting keynote coming up and possibly a little work to do to get the visual aids going. Let's thank our panel. You guys are my total heroes. Thank you.